All right, so today we are diving into something I think is really fascinating, insect farming.
Okay.
You know, our listeners like to stay ahead of the trends, and this is one that's certainly creating quite a buzz these days.
Yeah.
We've got some research articles here, even some firsthand accounts from insect farmers, right here in the Netherlands.
Wow.
So think of this as your crash course on insect protein. Is it the future of food or just a passing fad?
Yeah.
I gotta say, the thought of like munching on crickets doesn't exactly have me like clearing my plate just yet. But hey, I'm open to being convinced.
Well, I think you've come to the right place.
Okay.
It's true, entomophagy, which is the practice of eating insects, it's not exactly mainstream yet, especially not here in the West.
Yeah.
But to really grasp why this is a conversation worth having,
Uh-huh.
we need to address the elephant in the room, the global population boom. I
Right.
mean, the research we have here says we're adding 3 babies to the planet every single second.
It's a lot of babies.
3 babies
Yeah.
every second. Let that sink in for a moment.
Yeah, that's a lot of hungry mouths to feed.
Exactly. And feeding that many people sustainably, it's going to require some serious innovation,
Yeah.
especially when you consider that our current methods of food production, particularly meat production, are already putting a huge strain on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, traditional livestock farming, it's incredibly resource intensive. You
Uh-huh.
need a ton of land water feed, not to mention the greenhouse gas emissions. It's really not a pretty picture.
No, it's not. And let's not forget about the reliance on soy for animal feed,
Yeah.
which is a huge driver of deforestation. It's this whole tangled web of environmental concerns.
Yeah, it's not.
It is, so we're not just talking about producing more protein. We're talking about producing it in a way that doesn't cost us the planet.
Okay.
And that's where our little six-legged friends come in.
Okay, bring on the bugs.
Insects are like nature's tiny little protein factories. They're incredibly efficient at converting feed into usable protein, way more efficient than cows or pigs.
Really?
And the best part, they can thrive on organic waste stuff that would normally end up rotting in a landfill.
So we're talking about like literally turning trash into treasure.
Exactly. You're closing the
Mhm.
loop on food waste. You're feeding it to insects who then become food themselves.
That's pretty ingenious.
It is a very elegant solution.
Okay, so insects as food. It's a fascinating concept, but
Yeah.
what insects are we talking about here exactly? Are we talking like ants, grasshoppers, spider? I mean,
Right.
I need some specifics.
Well, let's stick the all-star lineup from the research we've got here.
Okay.
First up, we've got the black soldier fly larva.
Black soldier fly larvae. They sound like something out of like a sci-fi movie or something.
Right.
Yeah.
They might have a futuristic name, but these larvae are all about going back to basics. In a good way, of course.
Okay.
Black soldier fly larvae are like nature's ultimate recyclers.
Okay.
They can eat all sorts of food waste stuff we humans can't digest, like really
Yeah.
break down, transform it into this highly nutritious protein source.
So instead of all that food waste going to landfill, we could be feeding it to these larvae.
Exactly. It's a game changer in terms of waste management and sustainable protein production.
Okay, what else we got?
All right, next up is an insect you might actually recognize, the yellow mealworm.
Yellow mealworms.
Yep. You'll find them in pet stores, especially for people who own reptiles.
Oh, right. Yeah, I've seen those before.
Exactly.
People actually eat them too.
They do.
Yeah.
And they're gaining popularity because they have this mild, nutty flavor.
Hmm.
And they have a very impressive nutritional profile.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We're talking high in protein, healthy fats, the essential amino acids all packed into this little worm.
So instead of adding like whey protein to my smoothie,
Yeah.
I could be adding mealworm powder.
You absolutely could. And
Yeah.
honestly, you might not even notice the difference.
Really?
Yeah. Mealworm flour is already being used in a variety of foods. You can find it in baked goods, protein bars, even pasta.
Wow. So they're already sneaking it in.
They're sneaking it in.
Okay.
It's a great way to boost the protein content of everyday foods without compromising on taste or texture.
That's pretty cool. Okay. What else? What else is on the menu?
All right. Another contender is the lesser mealworm.
A lesser mealworm. Okay.
Yeah, and these guys used to be considered pests, actually on poultry farms.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So from pest to plate, that's quite a journey.
It is a remarkable transformation, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Okay.
Lesser mealworms offer a very similar nutritional profile to traditional feed ingredients like soybean meal, but with a much smaller environmental footprint.
So we could be feeding them to our chickens instead of relying on soy.
Precisely. It's a win-win for everyone involved except maybe the soybeans.
Okay. And
And finally, we can't forget about the insect world's most famous singers,
okay.
crickets.
Crickets. Really? I always thought of them as like background noise, not really a food group.
I know, it takes some getting used to the idea.
Yeah.
But they are a fantastic source of protein, iron, vitamin B12.
Huh.
And they have this nice crunchy texture that some people find quite appealing.
So you're saying instead of reaching for a bag of potato chips, I could be snacking on roasted crickets?
You absolutely could.
You're definitely making me think differently about snack time. I'll give you that. Okay, so we've got this whole lineup of edible insects. They're sustainable, they're nutritious.
Yeah.
But let's talk business for a moment. Can you actually make money farming these little critters?
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's definitely a new industry, so data is still emerging.
Right.
But the research you shared actually had some really interesting insights from yellow mealworm farmers over in the Netherlands.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it seems they're already seeing some pretty impressive profits.
Yeah. Really? That's fascinating. I guess people are more open to eating insects than I thought.
It seems so. The research highlighted two main business models when it comes to mealworm farming. You've got rearing, and then you've got reproduction.
Okay.
So rearing is pretty much like traditional livestock farming. You raise the mealworms to their full size, and then you sell them.
Okay.
Reproduction that focuses solely on breeding the mealworms and then selling either the eggs or the baby worms to rearing farms. So think of it like a specialized hatchery, but for insects.
Interesting. And are people choosing one model over the other? Are they both equally viable?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Both rearing and reproduction are proving to be profitable.
Huh.
Yeah, rearing farms, those are seeing an average 50% return on assets.
50%. That's incredible.
Yeah.
You try finding returns like that in almost any other industry. That's huge.
It's significant to put that into perspective. For every dollar invested, those farmers are making an extra 50 cents back. That's a great return.
Yeah.
But hold on to your hat because it gets even better with the reproduction farms.
Okay.
They're looking at an average 289% return on assets.
289%. Okay, now we're talking. What is the secret sauce behind those kinds of numbers?
Well, it really comes down to efficiency and specialization.
Okay.
Reproduction farms, they have a much faster turnaround time.
Right.
We're talking weeks instead of months.
Okay.
And they can really focus on optimizing that one crucial process, breeding.
Yeah.
Plus, they require less investment in rearing equipment and infrastructure.
So their overhead is lower.
Exactly, so their profit margins are even higher.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm quitting my job. I'm starting a mealworm reproduction farm like tomorrow. What's the one?
Sure. It's definitely tempting, isn't it? But even with those impressive numbers, there are still some hurdles to overcome.
Oh, like what?
Well, because insect farming is still such a new industry, a lot of traditional investors and lenders are hesitant to jump on board.
Really?
Yeah, they want to see years of data before backing something. And for a lot of insect species, that data just isn't there yet.
So it's kind of a catch-22 then? It seems like a good bet, but it's still a gamble.
Exactly. And we can't forget about what we talked about earlier, the ick factor.
Yeah.
Some people might be all about that adventurous eating, but for your average consumer, convincing them to embrace insects as food, that's still a big hurdle.
Yeah, it's going to take some clever marketing, some re-education.
It is. It's like sushi.
Yeah.
It took a while for people to come around to the idea of eating raw fish, but now look at it. It's everywhere.
That's a good point. And, as the industry grows, we also have to be mindful of those large-scale industrial farms. They could end up pushing out the smaller players. We've seen that happen before in other sectors.
Absolutely. It's a valid concern for sure.
It's exciting, but there are challenges that come with that. I guess every industry faces that.
It's true. There's a lot of potential here, especially with the right support. Imagine what government subsidies or incentives could do for this industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about those valuable insect byproducts. We talked about frass earlier. Imagine harnessing that as fertilizer.
Oh, it's a gold mine. A
I know.
completely untapped resource with huge potential.
So it sounds like we're really just scratching the surface of what's possible with insect farming.
I think so. I think the future is wide open.
It is exciting, and who knows, maybe someday we'll be using insect extracts in cosmetics or pharmaceuticals.
The possibilities really are endless. It's going to be fascinating to see where this industry goes.
Yeah, well, I think the takeaway for anyone listening today is be open to the idea of insects as a sustainable food source.
I agree.
The future of food might just have 6 legs,